Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Discover the Difference about women at Tepper. And I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. You can go ahead and type into the chat box. And if you wish, tell us where you're logging in from. Great. All right, so this is a good sign. Everyone can hear us. I see India, Turkey, lots of Pittsburghs. Great. So before we get started, I'm Gina Cicchetti. I'm an associate director at Tepper, and I work pretty closely with the Tepper Women in Business as the lead recruiter for women, and also the Forte organization as well that hopefully, if you're not a part of, you'll get to learn more about. As we get started, this is a moderated chat. And so please, as we're going through the presentation, you can type your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll do the best we can to address them towards the end of the presentation. And at any point, if you can't hear us, go ahead and type into the chat. Hopefully everything will run smooth today. So the purpose of today's webinar is just to simply help you understand the distinct benefits of the Tepper MBA and curriculum and the diverse community that we have, hearing from our current students. And so, Nancy, we'll start with you. And would you please introduce yourself, where you're from, you're part of the part-time program. Yep. So, what are you currently doing in addition to being a student, and what do you hope to do after the MBA program?
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. My name is Nancy Geronian. So I'm a part-time student in my second of 3 years. I'm also a full-time consultant with IBM. I'm in the digital experience realm. I do everything from virtual conferences to microsites and things like that for usually larger clients who need things very quickly with a bigger team. And when I started the program to where I am now, I think it's almost funny how things change very quickly and for most of my peers. So I think for me, looking forward, when I finish the MBA program, I think it's just continuing to manage larger products, bigger budgets, and focusing on what are my executive leadership skills and how do I want to get that to the next level. And I'm in Pittsburgh and I love Pittsburgh. I went to Carnegie Mellon for undergrad as well. And in addition, I'm also doing my yoga certification. So I love doing yoga and practicing that. So thank you, everyone.
Great. And Leanna, please go ahead, share a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leanna Louie. I'm originally from Berkeley, California, although I was actually born abroad in Vietnam. So raised here, I did my undergraduate at Stanford and then did a sort of like Teach for China, Teach for America, but in China. And then I worked at the International Monetary Fund and was really interested in getting more technical expertise, which is why I ultimately chose Tepper for my MBA. I am currently in my second year.
And last but definitely not least, Cynthia, please go ahead.
Hi, my name's Cynthia. I'm originally from South Jersey, just outside of Philly. I attended undergrad at the University of Miami. And I ended up staying in Florida after graduation. I'm currently in Florida right now. My partner and I do long distance. But given that we are virtual at Tepper after Thanksgiving, I'm back home in Fort Lauderdale. Prior to Tepper, I worked in tech. I was a system administrator and a project manager. And I have accepted a full-time position at Wayfair. So I will be a senior category manager after graduation.
Great. And I do have a brief presentation to go through. So hopefully this will work out. And can everyone see the PowerPoint? We're good. All right, thank you. So as we begin, there's been so much has changed in just the business world, and the transformation with tech being more and more intertwined in the business community. And that's why we feel at Tepper, we're definitely poised to, help you with your careers and the changing landscape, especially, trying to navigate during this time as well. We talk a lot about the data analytics and leadership, so our students will be able to really share their experiences with you. So again, just wanted to share our students, but we'll get that at the end as well. So how will you lead? What are your goals? What's drawing you to Tepper? How do you feel that Tepper can help you get there? So Nancy, I know being in the part-time program for you, but share some insights into how you believe the leadership and analytics helps the students stand apart in our program.
Yeah, so in terms to leadership in general, almost every single class will challenge you to lead and not only just kind of be a bystander and take notes and take a final. So I think that's what I think with Tepper, you'll be in group projects where, sometimes for me, one of my things is I tend to want to lead all the time. So in Tepper, it's working with they're all leaders. So it's kind of working together with people with that kind of personality trait, which I find really fascinating. And I think many of our peers at Tepper, I've heard this multiple times, like these are like the best groups we've ever worked with. We're like, wow, everyone is so smart, passionate, is a great speaker. So I think in terms of leading in Tepper, it's just, you'll continually work on it, but a lot of people come into the program with really a great base of leadership skills as well.
Great. And Leanna, how has Tepper helped you enhance these skills?
So I leaned heavily into the Accelerate Leadership Center and the resources that are available there. I have a very close relationship with Lauren, who I actually called on a weekly basis during my internship, and had somebody who I felt like was really advocating for my development as a leader. I've also had the opportunity to be on the board of the Tepper Women in Business, and actually Cynthia, Nancy, and I are all on the board. So we have plenty of opportunities to put ourselves in leadership positions here.
Great. And Cynthia, I know you had mentioned that you actually come from an architecture major background. So, that's definitely not, I think, what people think of as Tepper. We're all engineers, that very quant focused major. How is Tepper helping you develop those skills throughout the program?
Yeah, so I think, especially for women, sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating to hear about the Tepper brand and the quant, but they really give you a ton of resources along the way. I would say the biggest resources are my classmates. I know Liana and Nancy will agree. There are lots of people at this school who will have a lot of different skills. I might not be as strong in the analytical skill set, but our classmates have made some really amazing study guides that they share to the whole class. It's important to note that at Tepper, there's grade non-disclosure. So everybody wants everybody to do well. There's no competing for grades. So we had, to use a specific example, we had CPAs who tested out of accounting and used their personal time to hold study sessions if you wanted for accounting. On top of that, every professor has office hours, and there's also free tutors. So I would say that there's no shortage of resources if the analytical stuff frightens you a little bit. I had never taken any of the classes that we took here at Tepper, and it was certainly a challenge, but it was very much doable, and there was no shortage of ways for me to get extra help if I needed it.
Yeah, great. Now, I also have heard you're the #1 fan of Accelerate Leadership Coach. So share with everyone your experiences that you've had.
Well, it sounds like Liana and I have the same coach who I'm a very big fan of. My experience with Accelerate is twofold. They hold a lot of great webinars on various topics. So if there's anything that you want some help with, they do stuff on imposter syndrome, how to run a meeting, really anything that engages with leadership and how to be a better leader. And then there's also the one-on-one coaching sessions, which Liana and I are obviously big fans of. And those are professional individuals who have worked in industry to give leadership advice to executives. So you guys may be familiar with maybe senior leaders at your current companies have, you know, that resource available to them, but it's unusual and I think a great differentiation for Tepper that we have those one-on-one coaching sessions available to us. So you can work on, you know, how to deal with people who maybe you have a very different leadership style from, or maybe you're struggling to decide between consulting and tech. Now, they're not the career center. They're not going to say apply to XYZ firm, but they'll help you explore your interests to see maybe what would be a better fit for you. So that's a really flexible resource that you can use in any way that you need to, in order to make sure that you meet your goals to become a better leader and equip yourself for your future at post-Tepper.
Yeah, and Nancy, you know, being a part-time student, you know, I always kind of felt that you might be somewhat at it as an advantage working with your leadership coach, because you get to, you know, take what you're learning and employ it in your work day right then and there. You know, share with us a little bit more about your experiences that you've had, and really, you know, just maybe trying to enhance your career right now, you know, while you're getting your MBA at the same time.
Of course. So I think whenever I had a one-on-one, I think I've already had 2, if not 3. And I think it was the first one where we had to complete an assessment and then they took a look at it and talked us through it. And I was laughing because I was like, wow, how do you know me so well, and et cetera. And so she hit on things that made me, she spoke about my strengths, which is always a nice, you know, complimentary, but she also spoke about things that, you know, maybe I didn't recognize. So like, for example, with me, like I can definitely have like a long laundry list of goals that I want for myself, but she's like, you really need to kind of narrow that focus. Like, you know, it's great accomplishing a lot of things, but she goes, what do you actually want to accomplish in the next year? So I think with that focus, it really helped me, and I continue to work on that goal. But it was because of that conversation, it got me thinking, like, how do I want to narrow my scope a little bit? And that helped out. Mm-hmm.
So moving on to the Master's Career Center, you know, I think, you know, our stats really speak for themselves. I also always like to point out the 4,377 plus number, because I think it really shows that the staff is committed to, you know, our students, and the amount of times, the one-on-one sessions that they're meeting with you when you need them, I think is just as important. You know, we are a smaller school, but you really get to know your career advisor, your leadership coach, the faculty. So, you know, Cynthia, you mentioned that you have your full-time offer from Wayfair. You know, tell us a little bit more about the MCC and how they helped you prepare for that, or even your internship.
So I found that opportunity through on-campus recruiting. So that's a relationship that the MCC has fostered directly with Wayfair. We have a pipeline of Tepper alum at Wayfair. So last fall I applied, and then through on-campus recruiting did the first and second round interviews with Wayfair. I went there this summer and really enjoyed my summer, was very impressed with everybody I met, had a ton of great conversation with probably 15 different Tepper alum at Wayfair, and then was delighted to be able to come back and share the great news with my career coach that I received a return offer, and I was thrilled to be going back. I think I took all of 24 hours to decide whether or not I was going to sign the return offer. So couldn't be more pleased with the career outcome aspect of my MBA journey.
Great. And, you know, let's focus now more so on the diversity. And, you know, we really value diversity at Tepper. You know, it just really enhances the experience in the classrooms, all your personal backgrounds and professional backgrounds as well. So Leanna, you know, how do you believe the Tepper School fosters and the inclusive community at Tepper?
Well, there are plenty of affiliate clubs, not just the professional clubs, which are instrumental to getting our internships and preparing us for our interviews. But because we're talking about diversity, there's a whole number of clubs that have students meeting each other and making sure that we have conversations. There's a bit of cross-pollination between the boards, making sure that we talk to each other, not just to ourselves. As I mentioned, I'm part of the Tepper Women in Business, but I also believe that knowing more about other experiences is important. So I've made it a point to join the BBA, which is the Black Business Association, because I, at this point, want to start fostering those relationships that I can bring forward in my career and understand, like, what are the challenges for my classmates who are from underrepresented minority groups. Also, like, having the experience of meeting more international students as well and knowing what challenges they face as well has been very important for me and a priority. So I think Tepper is really good at having a community that I can learn from.
And Nancy, let's talk a little bit more about Tepper Women in Business and, you know, your experience on the board and just being a part of the organization. So how does the TWIB, Tepper Women in Business, help foster that community as well?
Yeah, so with TWIB, it's really been impactful on me personally, in addition just to kind of building a larger Tepper Woman in Business community. So I think the reason why I even wanted to be on the board was I attended a small chat when I just started off. I was like a brand newbie in Tepper as a part-time student. And I think Cynthia was actually might have been there, but the topic was feminism and how being a feminist and things like that. And it was just so refreshing being able to talk about these things in an open way, where people had differing views, and it was felt very safe and opening. And for me, like, I actually never considered myself a feminist until I like started attending small chats and things like that. But it just was comforting to know that people can be a feminist but still want, for me, it was my fiance now doing some things for me, like take me out on a date, etc. So I think it's just personally growing, but also growing as a community, because, for example, we had the leadership conference last year and I helped plan it. And my twin sister, who is doing her MBA at Duquesne, she attended, and she was just blown away by just not only how personable the TWIB members were, but also just the amount of attendees that attended and got value out of it. So I think it's just the more we bring in the Pittsburgh community, in addition to the women community at Tepper, it's a win-win. So I'm excited to keep pushing and creating events that are fun, engaging, and just make people feel comfortable in their own skin too.
Great. And Cynthia, what would you consider maybe your favorite event that Tepper has hosted?
I just have to quickly shout out to Nancy because she's being humble. She just got engaged. Congratulations, Nancy.
Thank you.
You beat me to the punch, Cynthia.
I would have to say my favorite event is the conference that we put on every year. It's going to be virtual this year, and we're really excited about the opportunity because that means that individuals aren't going to have to travel to Pittsburgh to attend. And I helped plan that last year. Nancy is helping plan it this year. And that event was critical to me deciding to matriculate at Tepper. I had been familiar with the academic background of Tepper. I could, look at the stats, read the career outcome, but I wasn't sure about the fit until I came and met the other women. I joked that I wasn't sure if all of my classmates were going to be walking calculators. And then I got to meet everybody and realized that this would be a place that I would form lifelong friendships. And that event really stood out to me because I got to meet then first years, and then when I started second year. So it was really nice to be able to see friendly faces when I stepped foot on campus and, get to know some of the older students, not necessarily in age, but in experience at Tepper as I got started. So by far and away, the leadership conference, as a prospective student, as a current student, a big highlight of my time at Tepper.
These are just a few of the diversity partners that we work with. And again, I've mentioned Forte, and it's an organization that has now really grown and encompasses, different stages, I'll say, of your business career. There's pipeline programs for undergrad, an MBA launch program, which Cynthia will tell us a little bit more about shortly. but also it's an organization when you are working and to build the networks and connections that will help foster your career as well. And so again, I would encourage you to read a little bit more about it and make, you can attend. They host many webinars throughout the year, and the MBA launch program is actually getting ready to start about mid January, and I believe they're still accepting applications. Not 100% sure on that, but you can find out more when you go to the website to learn more about Forte. So with that said, though, Cynthia, tell us what the MBA launch program is.
So I participated in the MBA Launch program, and it's a community of women who are going through the application process with you. And that was great for me because I had many of my friends from undergrad pursue med school or law school, but I didn't know anyone who was pursuing an MBA. So it allowed me to meet like-minded women who were going through the same pain points at the same time. So it could be as silly as having someone to lean on for the GMAT, or, really being like, has anybody finished applications yet? Am I behind the ball? And I've formed really strong friendships as part of that. And it's important to note that I did that virtually because I was based out of Miami and there weren't enough women in Miami doing it. So my experience is identical to what it will be like, even though with the pandemic, people aren't going to meet in person. And I have friends at various MBA programs across the country that I made through that I still keep in close contact with. So all around a great resource. And to Gina's point, if they're still accepting applications, I highly recommend it. It's just a phenomenal way for you to get support. And they have a lot of different resources. There's discounts on admissions advisors if that's something you're looking into, and they just highlight different things that you can get help with. Like I used Applicant Lab for my applications, which I don't think I would have heard of if I hadn't done Forte.
And again, I want to remind you to please go ahead and start submitting questions. We'll definitely get to them shortly. But Pittsburgh, I think I'm originally from Pittsburgh. I've lived in a couple other cities, found my way back home, and have really enjoyed it. Because I think for me, Pittsburgh's definitely evolved over the years, and I've lived in other Midwestern cities, and Pittsburgh, once the steel mills closed, turned to education and healthcare, and now it's biotech, and quite a nice amount of startups happening as well in Pittsburgh, and the food scene. I've always said that when the New York Times writes an article about how there's a large amount of New York chefs moving to Pittsburgh to start their restaurants, we've made it. The rent, you can afford to start your restaurant here, and it survives. So I was like, we made the big time if the New York Times is writing about us. So with that said, Leanna, I know you moved here from DC more recently. So, tell us about that experience and what was drawing you to not just Tepper, but Pittsburgh, and seeing yourself here for a couple years.
So actually, I was making a strategic choice when I signed up for my MBA to try to apply to schools in cities that were smaller and cheaper, quite honestly, so that as a student, I would not have to worry about like if I had to go down and take out for lunch, whether that was going to break my wallet. So it was a bit of a calculated measure, but of the small cities that I was looking at, Pittsburgh was the most vibrant to me. I really appreciated that I could still go and find a French cafe with macarons in it. I also really like the fact that there are different districts that you can go to that have their own characteristics and feels. And that was actually very similar to DC, actually, where different neighborhoods have different priorities and culture. So I really loved that. And it was kind of a one-to-one match there.
And Cynthia.
And you get to meet amazing people like Gina and Nancy, who are Yinzers to the core.
That's a whole other topic. Cynthia, how'd we get you coming up from Miami? You know, sunshine. We may not get hurricanes here, thankfully, but how'd we get you to come up here where it does snow?
So I am originally from the Philadelphia area, but I've lived in South Florida for 10 years. So I was a little concerned about my first real winter, but pro tip, just buy one of those North Faces that is basically a sleeping bag and you'll be fine. I didn't know anything about Pittsburgh before applying to CMU. I had never visited before I had the opportunity to come for Women's Weekend. And I didn't really, I mean, to Liana's point, I didn't want to be in a super expensive city. Like I chose not to apply to programs in New York City, for example, but my expectations were blown away in Pittsburgh. To Liana's point, the neighborhoods are very interesting. A really fun benefit of being a CMU student is you get free entrance into the museums. And Pittsburgh is Andy Warhol's hometown, and there's some really spectacular Warhol museums that are a real treat to be able to visit. I live in the Shadyside neighborhood, which is where a lot of the graduate students live. So a lot of my classmates live just a few blocks from me, which is really fun and a lot and really easy. I live off Walnut, which has a ton of great little shops and restaurants. Living close to a Sephora has been very dangerous for my wallet, but it's convenient. So don't worry about the winters. Buy a nice coat, buy some bean boots, and you will be, you know, I've been blown away by the city. And maybe this is a hot take for the Yinzers on the call, but I think that Philly and Pittsburgh have more in common than either city cares to admit.
Except when hockey season, when the Flyers play the Penguins.
Not on sports, but on I think attitude.
Yeah. But Nancy, you know, you're living here, but you know, I always felt that it got really cold when the students traditionally were not here. That's when I don't like our weather, but I do feel like the students do miss a lot of the bad parts, thankfully, because of breaks. But you know, well, you tell us just still what you're enjoying about the city.
Yeah, so I think, Gina, like you mentioned, I was one of those people that was here for Carnegie Mellon for undergrad, and I moved away actually to DC for 4 years. And I was like, I'm never moving back home. I like bigger cities. And then I was like, I miss Pittsburgh. And so I moved back after about 4.5 years. And the reason why is, number one, people are friendly. It is so nice walking into a store and people just are very polite, but not polite so you buy something, but polite because they genuinely want to know how your day is going. And that's across the board. I think also for me, I love the arts. And I think Cynthia already mentioned great examples of Andy Warhol. But for me, I lived in downtown. I just moved into a house last week, and the bottom of our apartment building was like a beautiful mural of Andy Warhol and all the bridges. So it was just like different things like that just make me love Pittsburgh. It's just, you'll find quirky things around the city as well. So if you want to know, I can definitely let you know about that. Cool coffee shops like Liana mentioned. And I think number three, I think, Gina, it's more about what you said, the potential and the opportunities. And now it's like so many startups are coming here, but not only restaurants for New York, but there's so many New York builders and developers coming into the Pittsburgh area because it's so profitable. It was very hard buying a house. It's not the buyer's market, but it's definitely a great time right now for people who even want to get into real estate. You know, there's always locations that are more up and coming that make the neighborhoods even more beautiful. But I love the historic charms of places like Squirrel Hill and Lawrenceville and other places like that. So huge advocate of Pittsburgh, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be the buyer's market for you at the moment, but you know, Pittsburgh housing has pretty much remained steady. We never had that boom like a lot of other cities did. So I think that's just how Pittsburgh's been able to weather everything and just, you know, still stay on top. Something else that I think everyone has pointed out is just the cost of living. I mean, I think we're all well aware of cost of living when we're looking at different cities, whether it's for a job or now for grad school. And you can afford to be a student here. I always say, like, you know, you can live anywhere for 2 years, but it's really nice as a student, the cost of living being so low here.
You know, I have a quick anecdote. So yeah. I'm a big college football fan, which Liana and Nancy both know. And I have a vivid memory of going to William Penn Tavern and getting food and hanging out there for 3.5 hours and then getting my bill and being sure that they gave me the wrong bill, because compared to Miami prices, there's no way I could eat and drink for 3.5 hours and get away for $25, including tip.
Yeah, I mean, it's for someone who kind of relies on the restaurant scene, because I just don't like to cook. When I go out to dinner, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be my meal, order a lot, I'll get like a couple days out of it, and it's just so reasonable. It's great here. So, keep that in the back of your mind. It's 2 years, cost of living. You don't want all your money to go towards rent. You still want to be able to have fun, because as the ladies had mentioned, that's also part of the MBA experience, and just, having fun with your classmates. So just want to make sure you're aware of our application deadlines, and they are posted online. We'll have our round 2 a little bit after the new year. And again, these are amazing, some of the members from Tepper Women in Business. And that is it. So I realized during this time, it's a little bit difficult because of, not being able to travel and get a feel for the school. So I would just encourage you, reach out to the students, the student ambassadors, reach out to Cynthia, Nancy, Liana. If you have any other questions, I think you'll find that the students are more than willing to help you. We have some videos through Chart Your Path to help you learn more about the school. Also, you can Google videos of Pittsburgh, Shady Side, Squirrel Hill, where students live. Again, I realize it's telling you to sit in front of a computer some more, but, just try and think of ways just to get to know the city a little bit more as well, especially during this time. So that is... stop sharing, and hopefully we have some questions. Let's see here. Would anyone like to talk about experiential leadership opportunities? Did anyone go on career tracks, or even the spring tracks as well? I guess not, because not this past year, but how about your first year?
I didn't go on any of the tracks. I don't know if Nancy or Liana did, but pertaining to leadership, something I think I didn't fully appreciate until I came to campus was the size of the Tepper program allows you to participate in a lot of different organizations. If you want to be involved with something, you can be involved with something. It's not as cutthroat as what I've heard from friends in other programs to be involved in various clubs and organizations. So kind of really sky's the limit as far as what you can get involved with here. I am involved with Tepper Women in Business. I'm an editor on our kind of joke newspaper that's for and by Tepper students called the Robber Baron. And I'm on the B&T advisory board. So I would say that's typical, students being involved in 2 or 3 different things. And I've really enjoyed having a diversity of things to be involved with.
Nancy, I know you're part of the planning committee for the leadership conference. So we do have a question, just, be on the lookout probably by the end of the year or early January.
Probably early January. Yeah, we'll definitely have more to say at that point.
Good. Yeah, so there'll be some information that will be posted on our website and in a couple emails. So stay tuned. But of course, you can always email me, and I'll try and get you information as well. And before we leave, I will put my email in the chat.
Gina, there seems to be 1 or 2 questions about the academics.
Go ahead.
And I would be happy to give that a go.
Sure, go ahead.
So the teaching is pretty much what is advertised. It is quite quantitative at Tepper, and I think it's honestly part of our brand. But as Cynthia pointed out earlier, there is a lot of resources that will help you get through if you're not from a quantitative background. I don't consider myself from a heavy quantitative background either. I did international policy. There was some math involved with that, but it'd been several years and I've been doing great in the academics here. I also would like to point out that the students all really like to support each other. And there are opportunities to talk to the professors and get to know them. Every time that I've had questions that or couldn't make it to office hours, I just emailed the professor and they were very open to finding a time to talk with me. So that's something that I've really appreciated, being a part of a smaller classes, actually getting to know the faculty a bit more. One other last point I'd like to make is I had a call with a alum who's currently at Google, and he said that actually he'll talk to some of the HBS students or like Wharton and like mention, oh, we did calculus brush up before school even started, and they would say like, why do you even need to do that? And I think that's honestly put him ahead of his peers in a lot of ways. And take it from someone who's working at Google, he said that the Tepper education really helped him in that way.
Yeah, let's touch upon that a little bit about Basecamp, because I know that there's, and I think I always get the name mixed up, but like the math skills workshop. So let's just explain that a little bit too, because again, like, I mean, I did not pursue my MBA, but I was the person who avoided any math class that I could, like the plague. Like I'm, you know, so it would be very intimidating for me. But I guess Cynthia, you know, tell us a little bit about the math workshop, and you know, again, not coming from a quant focused background, what you thought of it and how that, you know, workshop was.
So the last time I had looked at anything remotely related to calculus was 2009, and I took Basecamp in 2019. So definitely a needed refresher, but it's a 4-week course that's part of Basecamp where you kind of get a refresher on calculus. And in addition to that, there's an optional virtual component to that happens before Basecamp that some students who hadn't taken calculus before get to participate in. So it was rusty to say the least because I hadn't looked at it in 10 years. But by the end of that 4 weeks, I was like, oh yeah, that's how you take a derivative. So you don't use it in all of your classes, but there's definitely a few classes where you're going to need to know some basic stuff like taking derivatives. So definitely required, and everybody takes it. Even if you're an engineer, you take it during Basecamp. So it's nice to have the students who are really strong in those courses right there with you if you lean over to the person next to you and say, I'm confused right now.
Yeah, and so we have a question about what the teaching style's like, and maybe let's throw in an elective that you've enjoyed as well. So Nancy, would you like to share anything about the teaching style or your favorite elective?
Yeah, sure. So I think with teaching style, I just answered it in Q&A, but it's more varied because from professor to professor, that depends on what they teach. But what is kind of unified across the experience, I think that it's a varied. So you're not doing kind of the same kinds of things like week to week. So a lot of it is combining group work with doing some readings with research or articles or something. Many of the professors incorporate what's happening now, like current trends or current situations, and they bring that in. And also they do talk about or bring in like other speakers sometimes. Like for example, my professor in marketing management, he's bringing in a speaker next week, which is interesting. So we get like different perspectives. And we also hear from our fellow classmates, since I don't think I've ever had a class where not a classmate spoke. So they always ask for people's participation, whether that's cold calling, which is very rare. I think it was just like stats where it was cold calling. But besides that, it was more like you raise your hand and then they call on you. And so that was a little bit nice and not as scary. But that's a nice thing too, because it's not only the professor speaking at us, it's like there's a conversation among the participants as well in class. and one I enjoyed. I think marketing management would be one, because in my line of work at IBM, like marketing is the sole purpose of why people do digital events and new websites. So I'm loving incorporating that like immediately into what I'm doing at work.
Yeah, thank you. And I decided to change my name so that everyone sees my email address. I figured it would get lost in the chat. So, please feel free to contact me afterwards. But in the meantime, Leanna, what's your favorite elective you've taken? I know I'm putting you guys
I have a lot. So I am also doing the business analytics track. I have a concentration in finance here at Tepper, but I also wanted that so tied in with business analytics that I thought I would take advantage of it now. And one of my favorite classes was actually the modern data management class. And for anyone who's has an engineering background, that's like the easiest class in existence. But for me, without coding background and not a lot of SQL, I definitely learned skills through that class that I don't think I would have gotten so quickly in my career or just trying to study it by myself. And honestly, I am now using Tableau for everything, even my other classwork. So I've put it to use.
Great. Cynthia, favorite elective you've had so far?
I have two, I'd probably say. I think negotiations is a very popular elective. That's really useful in almost any industry that you go into. And to piggyback off of Leanna, I took modern data management because I knew that I was going to Wayfair and I knew that they had SQL as their database system. So it certainly was not a requirement of my role, but it allowed me to stand out from my peers this summer and be able to pull my own data without having to ask the data team to pull things for me was great. And favorite professor is definitely Professor Placone. He's a favorite, and he also runs the Accelerate Leadership Center, just a really warm figure on campus.
Yeah. So we've gotten a couple work-life balance questions, and they are a little bit more geared towards Nancy, and I think Cynthia, then afterwards, if you could answer too, the being a full-time student perspective. But Nancy, go ahead. How are you balancing this working, school, planning a wedding now?
I might pass that one off to my fiance. No, I'm just kidding. So I think the way I do it all is first thing I mentioned in the response is my calendar. I write everything in there. Honestly, even sometimes like showering and like working out, like it's all in there because I need to like not only plan out all my meetings, but I need to fill it in so people don't put meetings on top of those breaks. So that's why I have to build that out from like 7 a.m. to almost 11 p.m. every day. So that's kind of how I manage my life. But I think what helps me out a lot is ensuring that I'm mentally there to be able to tackle everything every day. So that involves working out almost every single day. I do love my Peloton bike. And I did, for instance, like a yoga exercise this morning. And also the support of my family and friends. I would not be able to do everything I'm doing if I was doing it on my own. So I'm very open and I explain what help I need to. So like with my fiance, I'm like, I can't do this. You will be helping with like taking trash out and putting gas in the car, so it's just like everyone knows what I just don't have the capability of doing. And my mom, for example, she'll help me find clothes that I need, so it's just like the support team is so important. And it's just being really just real with people and saying like, I don't have time for this. Can you help me? And more likely than not, they'll say yes. So I think those are some of the things I try to practice on a day-to-day basis.
That's great. Cynthia, go ahead.
Yeah, I think something that has allowed me to be successful with balancing things is being intentional about what I spend my time on and kind of knowing what I do and don't want. I'm at a stage in my life where some of the more popular career paths like consulting and finance didn't appeal to me from a work-life balance perspective. So that allowed me to pretty quickly narrow down on which companies and which clubs I wanted to focus my time on my first year. And you have to kind of decide which things are more important to you. Like I have classmates who are very focused on getting 100 and 10% out of every single class. There are some classmates who say, I really want to focus on this class. This class is easier for me. Everybody has different strengths. Like I did quite well in the presentation classes, and I needed help in the quant classes. Some of my friends who are engineers, nothing scares them more than giving a presentation, but they can do, you know, SQL in their sleep. So I think you'll find that it's a very personal journey, and then you add recruiting on top of that. So I think being true to yourself is key, and really figuring out, you know, which clubs to invest in. I would say quality over quantity is key there as well.
Yeah, thank you. And so as we're beginning to wrap up, I want the three of you to think about kind of the you know, maybe what you wish you knew as you were going through the process of applying to schools, or you know, just about Tepper, any kind of last minute advice to those who have joined us today. So while you think about that, I'll just finish up some housekeeping items that, again, you know, please feel free to reach out to the office if anything comes up, any questions along the way. We're more than happy to help you throughout this process and help you learn more about Tepper. We will have some additional events coming up that you can find on our website. And once Mini 3 begins, I think like mid-January, if I remember correctly, you know, again, we'll be posting more classes online that you can register for both day and evening. So Leanna, we'll begin with you. You know, what kind of last minute advice, or what you wish you knew as you were applying? Just share some words of wisdom with the group.
I adopted a bit of a mantra through this whole thing because it is hard. You'll go through a lot of change at the beginning of your MBA. And so I always thought to myself, do I not like this because I really don't like it? Or do I not like this because it's hard? And so make sure that you're honest with yourself and genuine about if you're disliking something because it's hard, or if you're truly disliking something. And the faster you can do that, and the more you can prioritize your time, as Cynthia mentioned earlier, you are going to need to prioritize your time because it will go fast. So very best of luck to you. And I'm very happy to be a resource if any of you want to reach out.
Yeah, great. Cynthia?
I would highly encourage everyone, especially I saw some questions about sustainability and entrepreneurship, to go to that MBA ambassador page and find somebody whose interest you feel like aligns to you. All of those people have signed up to be contacted and are more than willing to have a 20-minute Zoom conversation with you to answer any and all questions you may have. As far as words of wisdom, I would say you don't get any extra credit for doing anything on your own. Our teachers will literally tell us that even if it's an individual assignment, we are encouraged to help each other. It's very common, you know, when pre-pandemic, you would just walk through the Tepper Quad and ask somebody if they were working on XYZ class, and then sit down next to them and do the homework together, even if it's not, you know, your very closest friend. I think one of the real strengths of the size of the program is I know every single person in my class. And I know that the first years have found a digital way to replicate that, you know, popping in and helping each other with homework. I believe they use Discord. And outside of academics, I would say, to Nancy's point, lean on your friends and family. You know, being really clear with my partner and telling him when I needed help, it has been important. So I think don't be shy to ask for help, and that starts now. So reach out to those MBA ambassadors, and please, especially if you have a specific interest like sustainability or entrepreneurship.
And last but not least, Nancy.
Yeah, so to follow up on that, as a part-time student, of course, we're kind of all around the globe. And so with that, doing work with people we do it via Slack. So for instance, if you're starting off the program and you're not invited to like a certain sharing, like ask your group about it. Like, oh, how do we want to do homework together? Because we will actually just put in like question 1, A, B, C, D, E, and like people will start commenting on like how they will solve that problem, which is so helpful. So I think that's like a very very key learning is just collaborate, keep working with each other. In terms of any lessons learned, I think for me, I think Cynthia mentioned this, I can't give 110% for every class with my workload and personal life. So I do what I can to the best of my ability and I show up for my team meetings. But I think one thing I wish I did a little bit differently was when I started to not understand something, go to office hours that week. Don't wait until finals week to start asking like, I don't understand this part of this question, you know? So just go to those office hours and start asking questions earlier in the mini and not the end. So that would be my lesson learned.
And so thank you again for joining us today. You know, we've all said it, reach out to us if you have any questions, and just stay tuned on our website for more events, and hopefully you can join us for them. Take care, everyone. Thank you.